Daf Yomi, Tractate Chullin, page 16a, top of the page, with the words Kashan Ahadadi. Kashan Ahadadi, Elav Shvamin Ashani, Bemechubar Mikaro Etalush, Wilmasav Chivosh Mamina. Ostensibly, the two clauses of the Braita are difficult as they contradict each other. Since the first clause states that slaughter with a blade that is attached is valid, and the latter clause states that slaughter is not valid. Rather, must one not conclude from it that there is a difference between a case where the blade was attached from the outset and a case where the blade was detached and ultimately he reattached it? The Gemara affirms, indeed, learn from it. Amar Mar, Hashoichet bemuchni shchitasoi kesheiro, ve'atanya shchitasoi pasula, loi kashya, habesalna de pacho, habesalna de mayo. The master said, in the case of one who slaughters with a mechanism of a wheel with a knife attached to it, his slaughter is valid. The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught in a Braita that his slaughter is not valid? The Gemara answers, this contradiction is not difficult. This Braita which rules that the slaughter is valid, it is in a case where the knife was attached to a potter's wheel. It kind of rhymes like potter's field, but it's really a potter's wheel. Sound reminds me of potter's field, but really it's a potter's wheel, whose movement is generated by the potter pressing on a pedal. Since the slaughter was performed by the force of the person's actions, the slaughter is valid. That Braita, which rules that the slaughter is not valid, is in a case where the knife was attached to a water wheel. Since the slaughter was not performed by the force of a person's actions, the slaughter is not valid. And if you wish, say instead, the rulings of both this Braita and that Braita are in a case where the knife was attached to a water wheel and the contradiction is not difficult. This Braita, which rules that the slaughter is valid, is in a case where the movement of the slaughter was generated by primary force. As the person releases the water, that turns the wheel. That bit the goat, that bit the cat. No, I'm kidding. As the person releases the water, that turns the wheel, and that initial turn of the wheel, the knife slaughters the animal. That Braita, which rules that the slaughter is not valid, is in a case where the slaughter was generated by secondary force, as the knife slaughters the animal on the second turn of the wheel. My time home. Giri today who dehani behani mili. And this is like that which Rav Papa says in the case of a certain person who bound another and diverted a flow of water upon him, and he died. The one who diverted the water is liable for his murder. What is the reason? It is because those were his arrows that were effective in his murder. And this matter applies in a case where he killed the other person by primary force, as the person was proximate to him and was directly drowned by the water. But if the person was further away and was killed by secondary force after the water flowed on its own, it is not by his direct action. Rather, It is merely an indirect action and he is exempt. Yasiv Rav Achore de Rav Chia Rav Chia Kamin Rabbi Yosef Rav Kamal Minay Lishkita Shehi Betalush Shenemar V'yikach Esamacher Zishchot Omar Lei Rav Rav Chia Mai K'omar Lei Vav Dichtiv Ha'ukfeta K'amar Kraziruzte D'Avraham Kamash Melahan. Rav sat behind Rav Chia, and Rabbi Chia sat before Yehuda Hanasi. And Yehuda Hanasi sat and said, "From where is it derived that slaughter is performed specifically with a blade that is detached?" It is derived from a verse, as it is stated, "And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son." Genesis 22:10. Rav said to Rabbi Chia, "What is he saying?" Rabbi Chia said to Rav, "He is saying an incorrect reason, comparable to the letter Vav that is written, V'yikach et ha'ma'achelet, lishchot et beno." It's hard to understand. Okay. Rav said to Rabbi Chia, what is he saying? Rabbi Chia said to Rav, he is saying an incorrect reason, comparable to the letter Vav that is written on the rough surface of a tree trunk. The Gemara asks, but didn't Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi say a verse as proof for his statement? The Gemara answers, the verse teaches us the diligence of Abraham, who had a knife prepared to slaughter Isaac. Just try to wrap your mind around a father slaughtering his own son, who he waited all his life for. It's very hard. I don't think many people really think about that so deeply. Makes you wonder what's really behind it. It does not teach any halacha concerning ritual slaughter. Amar Rav Pshita li talush ulibasov chibro linyan avodah zareh havi talush di amamal hamishtachaveh lebayis shelo asaro b'isa kedaitach havi mechubar Elohim al hehorim belohoim Elohim. Apropos the issue of slaughter with a detached blade, Rav said, "It is obvious to me that concerning an item that was detached and ultimately one attached it, with regard to the matter of idol worship, its halachic status is that of a detached item. As the Master says, one who bows to his house has rendered it forbidden as an object of idol worship. And if it enters your mind to say that its halachic status is that of an attached item, it is written with regard to idolatry, there are gods upon the high mountains, Deuteronomy 12, verse 2, from which it is derived, but the mountains are not their gods, as items attached to the ground are never rendered forbidden as objects of idol worship. The halachic status of a house built from stones that were detached is that of a detached item. L'inyan hechshar zo'im tanoihi detnan hakoi v'ka'oro al hakoi seil b'shvil shetudach harizeh b'chiyutan b'shvil shelo yilke hakoi seil eino b'chiyutan. With regard to the matter of rendering seeds susceptible to ritual impurity, there is a dispute between Tanaim, as we rendered in a Mishnah in Machshirin 4:3. In the case of one who places a bowl on the wall while it is raining, so that the bowl will be rinsed with the rainwater, if the water from the bowl then falls onto produce, that is under rubric of the verse, but when water is placed upon the seed, Leviticus 11:38. The water has the halachic status of a liquid, that he poured of his own volition on fruit and seeds. Consequently, it renders them susceptible to ritual impurity, but if he placed the bowl there, so that the wall will not be damaged, it is not under the rubric of the verse, but when water is placed upon the seed. Since he had no intent to use the water, it is not considered to have entered the bowl of his own volition, and it does not enter produce susceptible to impurity. הגוף הקשה אמרת בשביל שתודח הרי זה בחיותן, או בשביל שיודח הכויסל אין זה בחיותן. The Mishnah itself is difficult, as the inferences from the first clause and the latter clause are contradictory. In the first clause you said, in the case of one who places a bowl on the wall so that the bowl will be rinsed with the rainwater, that is under the rubric of the verse, but when water is placed upon the seed, and the water renders produce susceptible to impurity. By inference, if he placed the bowl so that the wall will be rinsed by means of the bowl, is that not under the rubric of the verse, but when water is placed upon the seed? That water would not render produce susceptible to impurity, because the intent was for the water to rinse the wall, which is an item attached to the ground. And then the Mishnah teaches in the latter clause, if you place the bowl so that the wall will not be damaged, it is not under the rubric of the verse, but when water is placed upon the seed. By inference, if he placed the bowl so that the wall will be rinsed, that is under the rubric of the verse, but when the water is placed upon the seed. As a wall has the status of a detached item, since it was built from stones that were detached. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Tiva mi shishana zo lo shana zo. Rabbi Papa Amar, Kul echad tanahu, habekoisil me'ora, habekoisil binyan. Rabbi Elazar said, this Mishnah is disjointed. The Tana who taught this first clause did not teach the second clause. There is a Tannaitic dispute whether the status of a wall that is built from detached stones is that of an attached item or a detached item. Rav Papa said the entire Mishnah is the opinion of one Tana. The first clause is in the case of the wall of a cave, which is attached from the outset. The latter clause is the case of the wall of a building, which is built from stones that were detached from the ground. And this is what the Mishnah is saying. In the case of one who places a bowl on the wall so that the bowl will be rinsed with rainwater, that is under the rubric of the verse, but when water is placed upon the seed, and the water renders produce susceptible to impurity. By inference, if he placed the bowl so that the wall will be rinsed by means of the bowl, that is not under the rubric of the verse, but when water is placed upon the seed. אבל בכויסל בניין בשביל שלא ילקה הכויסל הוא אין בחיותן, או בשביל שיודח הכויסל הרי זה בחיותן. In what case is this statement said? It is said in the case of the wall of a cave, which was always attached to the ground. But in the case of the wall of a building, whose stones were detached and subsequently reattached, if he places the bowl so that the wall will not be damaged, that is when it is not under the rubric of the verse, but when water is placed upon the seed. But if he places the bowl so that the wall will be rinsed, That is under the rubric of the verse, but when the water is placed upon the seed.